Most men react to disrespect with noise. They shout, they posture, they let their blood boil, and they desperately scramble to reclaim a dignity they feel slipping through their fingers. And in that precise moment of heat, they lose everything. They prove they are reachable. They prove they are fragile. They prove they are weak. When you lose your temper, you are essentially telling the world that your internal peace is for sale, and that any fool with a sharp tongue can afford to buy it. You are handing over the keys to your kingdom to the very person who seeks to burn it down. But there is a different breed of man, a man who understands that power is not a shout, but a profound, chilling silence. Thomas Shelby doesn't react. He calculates. He treats disrespect not as a personal wound, but as a strategic opening. He knows that an insult is a confession of the opponent's insecurity, and he waits for that confession to be complete before he strikes. By the end of this dossier, you will stop being a victim of social friction and start becoming the architect of your own untouchable aura. You will learn the art of turning an insult into a death sentence for your opponent's ego. You will learn to walk through the fire of disrespect without a single soot mark on your coat. What Thomas Shelby mastered in the smoke-filled rooms of Birmingham, Niccolò Machiavelli codified centuries ago in the cold marble courts of Italy. Power isn't about winning the argument. It's about owning the room before a single syllable is even uttered. It is about a sovereignty so absolute that it makes the mere thought of disrespect feel like a fatal mistake for those who dare to attempt it. If you have chosen the path of the strategist over the path of the victim, like this video and commit your presence to this journey by commenting, "I am sovereign." Let the world know that you are no longer playing by their rules. You are writing your own. Welcome to the shadows of the elite, where the only thing louder than your silence is the sound of your enemies falling. The first and most lethal weapon in your arsenal of psychological dominance is the weapon of strategic silence. The law of Shelby is simple but devastating. Never interrupt a man while he is disrespecting you. Let his words hang in the air until they begin to choke him. In the high-stakes game of social zadrez, most individuals suffer from a desperate need to defend their ego. When they feel the sting of an insult, they rush to fill the void with explanations, counterattacks, and justifications. This is a massive tactical error. By speaking, you provide your opponent with more data, more leverage, and a clear view of where your emotional triggers are located. Thomas Shelby, however, understands that silence is a vacuum that pulls the truth out of people. Think of the chilling tension in the small, dimly lit room of the garrison when Tommy meets with the IRA representatives. They arrive with the weight of an entire revolutionary army behind them, barking orders and making demands with a level of aggression intended to rattle any ordinary man. They are loud, they are threatening, and they are intentionally disrespectful to the Peaky Blinders' authority. But look at Tommy. He doesn't stand up. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't even stop the slow, methodical ritual of sipping his whiskey and exhaling a cloud of cigarette smoke. He allows their threats to vibrate against the walls until the echoes die out and a heavy, suffocating silence takes their place. In that scene, Tommy's internal psychology is a masterclass in sovereignty. He is not ignoring them. He is performing a cold-blooded assessment. He is looking for the tell in their eyes, the tremor in their voices, and the desperation behind their bravado. He knows that the IRA men are using noise to mask their own lack of local leverage. By refusing to speak, Tommy forces them to realize that their words have no impact. This is the ultimate subversion of status. When you do not react to a threat, You communicate that the threat is beneath your level of concern. You become a black hole that absorbs their energy without giving anything back. This is exactly what Niccolò Machiavelli meant when he taught that a prince should be a great pretender and a master dissembler. In the Machiavellian framework, your true intentions must remain hidden behind an impenetrable mask. Silence is that mask. It is the ultimate tool of the fox. A prince who speaks too much reveals his hand. A prince who remains silent forces his enemies to reveal theirs. Machiavelli understood that human beings are naturally uncomfortable with silence. We have a biological urge to fill the dead air. When you deny your opponent that comfort, they will inevitably begin to ramble. They will try to justify their disrespect. They will make even more grandiose claims, or they will eventually begin to backtrack as they realize their arrows are bouncing off an iron wall. This is where the contrast of status becomes undeniable. The common man, the man of the masses, feels the crushing need to explain himself because he lacks internal validation. He needs the other person to understand his side. The man of power, the Shelby-minded strategist, knows that explanation is a form of submission. To explain is to apologize for your existence. To explain is to acknowledge the other person's right to judge you. Thomas Shelby never explains. He only decides. In your modern life, this Zadrez social plays out in every boardroom, every social gathering, and every conflict. Imagine you are in a meeting and a colleague makes a snide, disrespectful comment about your recent performance, hoping to see you squirm in front of your peers. The common man would get defensive, perhaps citing data or blaming external factors, which only makes him look guilty and weak. The strategist does something different. You look them directly in the eyes, not with anger, but with a clinical, detached curiosity. You wait 3 full seconds after they finish speaking. Let the entire room feel the weight of their rudeness. Let the silence make them feel like a child who just shouted in a library. And then, only then, you ask a single, cold question. Are you finished? By doing this, you have completely flipped the script. You haven't defended yourself. You have audited them. You have moved the spotlight from your mistake to their behavior. You have demonstrated that while they were busy playing with words, you were busy observing their failure. This is how you reclaim sovereignty. You make it clear that their disrespect didn't wound you. It simply made them irrelevant. You must realize that your words are a currency of high value. Do not spend them on those who are bankrupt of character. When you remain silent in the face of disrespect, you are telling the offender that they haven't yet earned the right to hear what you think. You are treating their insult as a minor technical glitch in an otherwise perfect system. This requires a level of emotional discipline that most men will never possess. It requires you to kill the part of yourself that cares what the massa thinks of you. You are not a character in their story. You are the author of your own. By mastering the weapon of strategic silence, you stop being a reactor and start being a director. You transform the social arena into a theater where you hold all the scripts. Remember, the lion doesn't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep, and Thomas Shelby doesn't lose his breath over the noise of the insecure. Save your words for the kill. Until then, let your silence do the heavy lifting. This is the first step in building your empire of respect. It is the foundation of the untouchable aura that defines the Peaky Blinder. You are now moving from the world of noise into the world of power. Stay cold. Stay silent. Stay sovereign. The second pillar of your ascent to sovereignty is the mastery of calculated coldness, often referred to in the halls of power as the fox strategy. The law of Shelby dictates that emotional volatility is a debt you simply cannot afford to pay. Every time you allow your blood to rise in response to an insult, you are paying interest to your enemy. You are giving them a piece of your focus, a piece of your heartbeat, and most importantly, a piece of your control. Thomas Shelby operates on a level where emotions are viewed as biological noise, data points to be analyzed, not impulses to be followed. He understands that the moment you become angry, you become predictable. And in the world of the Peaky Blinders, being predictable is the first step toward the grave. To understand the depth of this coldness, we must look at the psychological warfare between Thomas Shelby and Inspector Campbell. There is a specific moment when Campbell, consumed by a petty, righteous fury and a deep-seated jealousy over Grace, attempts to humiliate Tommy. Campbell uses his position of legal authority to corner Tommy, throwing the most personal and venomous insults he can muster. He speaks of morality, of the filth of the Shelby name, and of the inevitable fall of the small Heath empire. An ordinary man would have swung a fist or shouted back in a desperate attempt to protect his family's honor. But Tommy stands there, framed by the gray Birmingham light, his face a mask of absolute terrifying stillness. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't even blink. He treats Campbell's venom as if it were a weather report, mildly interesting, but ultimately irrelevant to his objectives. Inside Tommy's mind, there is no offense. There is only the calculation of Campbell's weakness. He sees the sweat on the inspector's brow, the slight tremor in his hand, and the way his voice cracks under the weight of his own bitterness. Tommy realizes that by remaining cold, he is holding a mirror up to Campbell's instability. He is winning the battle because he is the only one who hasn't stepped into the arena of emotion. This is the living embodiment of Niccolò Machiavelli's famous observation in The Prince. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Disrespect is the ultimate trap. When someone insults you, they are setting a snare for your ego. If you react with lion-like aggression, you are stepping directly into the trap. You are playing the game on their terms. But the fox, the Shelby-minded strategist, recognizes the trap from a mile away. He knows that his coldness is his shield. Machiavelli argued that a ruler who is governed by his passions is a ruler who will soon be deposed. To hold power, you must hold yourself. You must be able to look at a threat or an insult and see it for what it truly is. A desperate attempt by a smaller being to feel significant. By maintaining a calculated coldness, you are signaling to the world that you are the wolf that the fox cannot lead into a snare. You are demonstrating a level of sovereignty that makes you fundamentally untouchable. In the modern Zadrez social, this translates to an absolute refusal to let social friction slow down your momentum. Whether it is a toxic manager trying to undermine you in a corporate setting or a peer making a backhanded comment at a dinner table, the rule remains the same. Treat disrespect as data. When someone tries to get a rise out of you, they are essentially asking for permission to lead you. When you stay cold, you deny that permission. The common man, the one trapped in the massa mindset, is governed by his nerves. He feels a physical heat in his chest when he is disrespected, and he acts on that heat to make it stop. This is why the common man is so easily manipulated by those in power. He can be baited into arguments, distracted by trivial slights, and led into conflicts that serve no purpose other than his own exhaustion. The man of power, however, is governed by objectives. Ask yourself, does reacting to this person get me closer to my goal? If the answer is no, then reacting is a waste of your most precious resource, your energy. To apply this today, Practice what I call the clinical filter. When someone says something disrespectful, mentally strip away the tone and the insult. Look only at the raw information. If there is no information, only noise, you respond with a level of coldness that borders on the mechanical. Give them a short, toneless, "I see," or a simple, lingering look that says, you have already calculated their irrelevance. You are not being nice, and you are not being mean. You are being indifferent. And indifference, as Thomas Shelby knows, is the most ruthless form of power. It tells the other person that they don't even have the power to make you angry. You are the architect of your own internal environment, and no one enters without your express invitation. This is the fox strategy. This is how you walk through a room full of enemies and remain the only one with a clear head. Stay cold, for the cold is where the strategist thrives. Moving further into the architecture of dominance, we arrive at the third pillar, redefining the terms of engagement. In any social interaction, there is a frame, an invisible set of rules that determines who is leading and who is following. When someone disrespects you, they are attempting to force you into their frame. They want you to answer their accusations, defend your choices, or play by their rules of engagement. The law of Shelby is a masterclass in frame control. Don't answer the question they asked. Answer the one you want to address. This is the art of strategic redirection. It is about maintaining what Machiavelli called strategic sovereignty, ensuring that you are never caught off guard, and that you are always the one defining the reality of the situation. Consider the legendary standoff between Thomas Shelby and the mercurial Alfie Solomons. Alfie is a man of chaos, a linguistic genius who uses a barrage of words, threats, and erratic behavior to destabilize his opponents. In their negotiations regarding the crossed lines of their respective empires, Alfie attempts to use disrespect as a tactical weapon. He shouts, he mocks Tommy's heritage, and he creates an atmosphere of imminent violence. An ordinary negotiator would be pulled into Alfie's whirlwind either by becoming fearful or by trying to match Alfie's manic energy. But Tommy does the opposite. He remains an island of absolute stillness in Alfie's storm. He ignores the insults entirely. He doesn't address the crossed lines from a position of defense. Instead, he pivots the entire conversation to the one thing that matters: leverage. He answers Alfie's theatrical threats with a cold, hard business reality. By doing this, Tommy is refusing to enter Alfie's emotional theater. He is essentially saying, you can play the clown, but I am here to discuss the crown. Tommy's internal psychology in these moments is centered on the concept of the prime objective. He knows that Alfie's disrespect is a distraction, a smokescreen designed to hide a weak hand. By redefining the terms of the conversation, Tommy strips Alfie of his primary weapon. He forces the interaction back into a space where logic and leverage rule, which is exactly where Tommy is strongest. This is the core of Machiavellian strategy. Machiavelli emphasized that a prince must always be the one to set the stage. If you find yourself in a position where you are being forced to defend yourself, you have already lost the initial skirmish. You must never allow your opponent to dictate the where and how of a conflict. A prince who allows others to define his problems will soon find himself solving problems that only benefit his enemies. You must be the one who asks the questions, the one who sets the pace, and the one who decides when the conversation is over. The contrast in status here is profound. The common man is a reactor. He is like a ball in a pinball machine, bouncing from one stimulus to another, always defending, always explaining, always trying to win the immediate argument. He wins the battle of words, but loses the war of respect. The man of power, the strategist, is an actor. He doesn't care about winning the argument. He cares about ending the game on his terms. He knows that the person who asks the questions is the one in control. This is a psychological truth that has been used by elites for centuries to maintain dominance over the masses. When you redefine the terms, you are asserting that your reality is more powerful than theirs. You can apply this immediately in your daily Zadrez social, particularly when dealing with passive-aggressive disrespect or jokes at your expense. When someone makes a subtle dig designed to lower your status in a group, they are expecting one of two things: a nervous laugh or a defensive comeback. Both are submissive responses because they both acknowledge the joke as valid. Instead, use the Shelby pivot. Look at them with a look of genuine cold confusion and ask, "I don't understand. Why is that funny? Explain the joke to me." This is a devastating move. It forces the person to explicitly state their disrespectful intent. It tears the mask off their passive aggression and forces them into a position of active discomfort. As they stumble to explain themselves, their status collapses. They look petty, and you look like the adult in the room who is simply too high status to be bothered by such trivialities. You haven't lowered yourself to their level. You have forced them to climb up to yours and fail. By redefining the terms of the engagement, you are telling the world that you are not a participant in their drama. You are the judge of it. This is how you maintain your strategic sovereignty. This is how you ensure that no matter what is said, you are the one who leaves the room with your power intact. You are no longer playing their game. You are the house, and the house always wins. The fourth pillar of your psychological fortress is the leverage of indifference. In the brutal hierarchy of the human mind, the most devastating response to an attack is not a counterattack, but the absolute refusal to acknowledge that an attack has occurred. The law of Shelby states clearly, you cannot be insulted by someone who does not exist within your hierarchy. To be insulted is to admit that the other person's opinion carries weight, that their voice has the power to alter your state of being. Thomas Shelby understands that in the grand architecture of power, most people are not enemies. They are simply background noise. They are the static on the radio of a man who is focused on a frequency of pure gold. When you allow yourself to be offended, you are effectively promoting your aggressor. You are giving them a seat at your table. You are telling them, you are my equal because you have the power to hurt me. Tommy Shelby refuses to grant such promotions. To witness this indifference in its purest form, one must observe Tommy's incursions into the lion's den of London, specifically his interactions with the lower-level enforcers of the Sabini gang. These men are professional intimidators. They are loud, violent, and desperate to prove their dominance through sheer thuggery. They corner Tommy in high-end clubs, surrounding him with the smell of cheap gin and expensive cigarettes, using every verbal and physical provocation in their arsenal to get a reaction. An ordinary man would be sweating, his eyes darting toward the exits, his body language screaming, "Victim." But Tommy moves through these encounters as if he is walking through a field of tall grass. He doesn't look at them with fear, nor does he look at them with hatred. He looks through them. When they shout in his face, he doesn't even pause his internal monologue. He treats these men not as rivals to be defeated, but as minor inconveniences, like a light rain or a slow-moving train. He understands that their disrespect is a currency that has no value in his bank. His internal psychology is centered on a concept of social irrelevance. To Tommy, these men are ghosts. They have no leverage, no vision, and no place in the future he is building. Therefore, their insults are literally meaningless. They are vibrations in the air that do not reach the inner sanctum of his mind. This is the strategic application of Niccolò Machiavelli's counsel regarding the avoidance of hatred and contempt. In The Prince, Machiavelli argues that while it is better to be feared than loved, a ruler must avoid being despised at all costs. However, there is a hidden layer to this. The most effective way to avoid being despised by those beneath you is to treat their existence with such profound indifference that they never even have the chance to touch your reputation. By not engaging in their petty squabbles, you maintain an aura of untouchable majesty. Machiavelli knew that once a prince descends into the mud to fight a peasant, he becomes a peasant. The mud sticks to both men equally. To remain a prince, you must stay on the high ground of indifference. You must realize that your time and your emotional energy are your most precious resources. To spend them on someone who has no impact on your prime objective is a strategic failure of the highest order. Indifference is not a passive state. It is an active, cold-blooded decision to maintain your sovereignty by denying your enemy the validation of your attention. The contrast in status here is the difference between a servant and a sovereign. The common man, the one who populates the massa, is a seeker of validation. He is constantly scanning his environment for signs of respect or disrespect. He is a slave to the opinions of others because he has no internal compass. If someone mocks his clothes, his job, or his lifestyle, his entire world collapses. He feels the need to argue, to prove them wrong, to show them he is worthy. The man of power, the Shelby-minded strategist, is his own judge and jury. He knows his value, he knows his trajectory, and he knows his sins. Because he is already at peace with his own darkness, the external light or shadow cast by others is irrelevant. He doesn't need your respect to know he is powerful, and he doesn't need your approval to know he is right. He is a self-contained empire. In your modern life, the leverage of indifference is your most powerful tool for dealing with the noise of the digital and social age. When someone leaves a hateful comment, when a distant relative makes a snarky remark at a holiday dinner, or when a peer tries to belittle your ambitions, you must apply the Shelby filter. Ask yourself, does this person have a seat at the table where my future is being decided? If the answer is no, then their words are noise. Treat them like a malfunctioning vending machine. It's a minor annoyance, a glitch in the system, but it isn't personal. You don't scream at the machine. You simply walk away and find a different source of what you need. To apply this today, practice the one-word response, or the nod of irrelevance. When someone tries to insult you, give them a simple, bored, okay, and then immediately return to whatever you were doing. Do not look back. Do not check for their reaction. The moment you move on is the moment they lose. You are essentially telling them that they are so insignificant that you can't even be bothered to form a full sentence in response. This is how you reclaim your time and your power. You are not ignoring them because you are afraid. You are ignoring them because they are not worth the effort of a reaction. This is the leverage of indifference. This is the path to becoming truly untouchable. The fifth pillar of your psychological evolution is the art of turning vulnerability into a trap. This is the most sophisticated form of social xadrez, social chess. While most men spend their lives desperately trying to hide their weaknesses, the strategist does something far more dangerous. He displays a carefully curated vulnerability to lure his enemies into a false sense of security. The law of Shelby is clear. Let them think they have bothered you. Let them think they are winning, only to lead them into a checkmate of your own design. This is the strategic retreat of the ego. It is about understanding that a person who thinks they have already defeated you is a person who has stopped looking for your next move. Arrogance is the greatest blindfold in the world. and you are going to use it to lead your opponents over the edge of a cliff. The definitive example of this strategy is Thomas Shelby's long-game manipulation of Billy Kimber. In the early days of the Peaky Blinders expansion, Kimber was the undisputed king of the racetracks, a man of immense wealth, massive physical power, and an ego that required constant stroking. Tommy knew that a direct, aggressive confrontation with Kimber would be suicide. So, he chose a different path. He played the role of the small-time bookie. He allowed Kimber to disrespect him, to talk down to him, and to treat him like a lowly servant who should be grateful for the crumbs from Kimber's table. In their meetings, Tommy bowed his head just enough. He used a tone of voice that suggested a measured submission, and he allowed Kimber to believe that he had Tommy firmly under his thumb. To the outside observer, it looked like Tommy was being humiliated. But inside, Tommy was an architect. He was using Kimber's arrogance as a cloak. By appearing weak, Tommy was able to gain access to Kimber's inner circle, learn his business secrets, and position his own men in the heart of Kimber's territory. He traded a temporary blow to his ego for a permanent expansion of his empire. He swallowed the pride of today to own the victory of tomorrow. This is the realization of one of Niccolò Machiavelli's most profound insights into the nature of power. Machiavelli taught that it is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. He argued that a prince must be a master of appearance. If your enemy believes they have found a weakness in you, they will focus all their energy on that one point, leaving the rest of their defenses wide open. By providing them with a fake vulnerability, you are essentially directing their fire. You are controlling where they attack. Machiavelli understood that the common people are always taken by appearances and by the results of an event. By appearing to be the loser in a minor social exchange, you gain the result of the entire war. You must learn to keep your friends close and your enemies closer, as the saying goes. But the Machiavellian twist is to keep your enemies close by making them feel like your masters. When an enemy thinks he owns you, he stops fearing you. And when he stops fearing you, he becomes vulnerable to the knife you have been sharpening in the dark. The contrast in status here is the difference between the common protector and the sovereign architect. The common man protects his ego at all costs. He cannot handle being seen as weak or disrespected, even for a second. If someone insults him, he must strike back immediately to prove he is a man. This makes him incredibly easy to manipulate. You can lead him anywhere just by pulling on the strings of his pride. The man of power, however, protects his empire, not his ego. He views his reputation as a tool, not a fragile glass ornament. If he needs to appear small to achieve a massive objective, he will do it without a moment's hesitation. He knows that the only shame is failure. Everything else is just theater. He understands that the person who has the last laugh is the only one whose laughter matters. In your modern life, you apply this by practicing strategic submission. If you find yourself in a situation where someone is trying to assert dominance over you, perhaps a rival at work or a social gatekeeper, do not resist them immediately. Let them win the small public moment. Let them make their point. Let them take the credit. And let them think they have cowed you. While they are busy celebrating their victory and basking in their own perceived brilliance, you are gathering intelligence. You are watching how they operate, identifying their allies, and finding the gaps in their strategy. You are building your counter-move in the shadows while they are blinded by the spotlight of their own ego. Then, when the moment is right, when you have all the leverage and they have zero suspicion, you strike. You launch your project, you secure the promotion, or you reveal the move that renders their previous victory completely irrelevant. They will never see it coming because they were too busy looking down at you to notice you were standing on the trigger of their destruction. This is the art of the Shelby trap. It is the ultimate proof that in the game of power, the loudest person in the room is rarely the most dangerous. The most dangerous person is the one who is willing to be forgotten until the moment he makes it impossible to ignore him. Stay hidden. Stay patient. Stay lethal. The sixth and final pillar of your strategic transformation is the mastery of the most primal tool in the human arsenal, the finality of the Shelby stare. In the architecture of social hierarchy, your eyes are the windows through which the world gauges your internal temperature. If they find fire, they know they can burn you. If they find a shifty, nervous flicker, they know they can break you. But if they find an absolute, unwavering void, a cold, crystalline focus that refuses to yield, they will instinctively understand that they have encountered a predator. The law of Shelby is a decree of ocular dominance. Your eyes should tell them exactly how expensive their next word will be. You are not looking at them to argue. You are looking at them to judge. You are not searching for their approval. You are weighing their very soul against the steel of your own resolve. When you master the stare, you no longer need to speak to end a conflict. Your silence, reinforced by a gaze that does not blink, becomes a psychological weight that forces the disrespectful to retreat into their own insecurity. To understand the sheer power of this mechanism, we must analyze Thomas Shelby's interactions with the Russian aristocrats in the third season. These are people who believe their blood is blue, who view Tommy as nothing more than a gutter-born tool to be used and discarded. They treat him with a level of condescension that would shatter most men's composure. They use their titles, their opulent surroundings, and their history of absolute power to try and make him feel small. But Tommy does something that completely destabilizes their sense of superiority. He holds their gaze. In the candlelit rooms, where the air is thick with the scent of old money and betrayal, Tommy locks eyes with these predators and does not let go. His eyes are not filled with the heat of a rebel. They are filled with the cold clarity of a man who has seen the end of the world in the trenches and survived. He looks at the Grand Duchess and the Tsarists not as rulers, but as targets. His stare communicates a terrifying truth. He is the one holding the guns. He is the one making the deals, and their titles mean nothing in the face of his ruthlessness. By refusing to look away, Tommy is claiming the space. He is asserting that in this moment, in this room, his reality is the only one that matters. He isn't just looking at them. He is dissecting them, finding the cracks in their arrogance, and waiting for the moment they inevitably blink. This ocular sovereignty is the modern application of Machiavelli's concept of cruelty well used. In The Prince, Machiavelli argued that while a ruler should strive for a reputation of mercy, he must know how to use cruelty strategically to maintain order. The Shelby stare is a form of psychological cruelty. It is a nonverbal threat that suggests an infinite capacity for violence or social destruction without ever having to draw a blade. It is the cruelty of making someone feel completely transparent and insignificant. A prince must show that while he is peaceful, his peace is a choice, and his capacity for ruthlessness is absolute. By maintaining eye contact during an act of disrespect, you are demonstrating that you are not afraid of the confrontation. You are signaling that you have already calculated the cost of destroying them and found it affordable. Fear, as Machiavelli noted, is a much more stable foundation for power than love, because fear is something you control, whereas love is something they give at their whim. When you stare down a person who has disrespected you, you are planting the seeds of a very specific, healthy fear. The fear that you are a man who cannot be rattled, and therefore a man who cannot be beaten. The contrast in status here is the biological difference between the common reactor and the sovereign master. The common man, the one who belongs to the massa, instinctively looks away when he feels social pressure. It is a submissive reflex inherited from our primate ancestors. To lower the gaze is to signal that you are not a threat, and that you accept the other person's dominance. When a common man is insulted, his eyes dart around, looking for an escape or for the approval of the crowd. He blinks rapidly, he looks at the floor, or he glares with a fake theatrical anger that everyone can see is a mask for his fear. The man of power, the Shelby-minded strategist, has overridden these primitive reflexes. He holds the gaze because he is the apex. He knows that the person who breaks eye contact first is the one who has mentally conceded the fight. In the high-stakes game of the elite, the ability to maintain eye contact is the primary signal of high testosterone, high status, and a high-functioning prefrontal cortex. It shows that you are in total command of your nervous system. In the modern world, you apply this through the power gaze during moments of social friction or professional challenge. When someone is speaking to you disrespectfully or trying to minimize your value in a meeting, do not look at your notes. Do not look at your phone. Do not look at the other people in the room for support. Lock your eyes onto the bridge of their nose, just between the eyes. This specific point of focus is psychologically destabilizing for the observer. It creates a sensation of being watched by something predatory and analytical. Do not squint in anger, and do not widen your eyes in surprise. Keep your expression neutral, your breathing deep and rhythmic, and your gaze fixed. Hold it until they finish speaking, and then hold it for 2 seconds longer in the silence that follows. This creates a vacuum of power that they will desperately try to fill with apologies or justifications. You are making it clear that their words haven't just failed to hurt you, they have failed to even make you blink. You are the architect of the moment, and your eyes are the iron gates of your empire. Once you master this, you will find that people speak to you with a new level of caution. They will realize that behind your eyes lies a man who is always calculating, always watching, and always ready to finish what they were foolish enough to start. Power is not a shout. It is not a frantic scramble for attention or a loud defense of a wounded ego. True power is the hum of a perfectly calibrated machine, working in the shadows of the night. Thomas Shelby did not build an empire in the smoke of Birmingham by reacting to every dog that barked at his heels. He built it by staying focused on the horizon while his enemies exhausted themselves with noise, emotion, and petty grievances. He understood that to be sovereign is to be the master of your own internal landscape. Throughout this dossier, you have been given the keys to that kingdom. You have learned the weapon of strategic silence, the coldness of the fox, the art of redefining the terms of engagement, the leverage of indifference, and the lethal trap of curated vulnerability. You have finally seen the finality of the stare that ends all arguments. These are not mere tactics. They are the fundamental laws of a higher existence. Tomorrow, the world will test you. Someone will try to pull you down into their chaos. Someone will offer you the bait of disrespect, hoping to see you react like a common man. In that moment, you will feel the old impulses rising, the heat in your chest, the urge to explain, the need to shout. Kill those impulses. Remember the smoke of the garrison and the cold marble of Machiavelli's court. You have a choice. You can react like a member of the masses, or you can respond like a Shelby. Choose the latter. Choose the path of the architect. Choose the path of the man who is so secure in his own sovereignty that the opinions of the irrelevant are nothing more than dust on his coat. Your final challenge is simple but absolute. Find the person who has most recently disrespected you. Do not hate them. Hatred is an emotional attachment you cannot afford. Instead, look at them with the cold eyes of a strategist. Thank them internally for providing you with a live subject for your practice. And then, move past them so completely and so successfully that in 6 months' time, they have to book an appointment just to see the back of your head. The world belongs to those who can remain cold while the room is burning. Go now and build your reign. The era of the victim is over. The era of the sovereign has begun.